Hey everyone, so long time no see. It's been about a year since I got into the pharmacy program. Um, a lot has happened since then, and as you may have noticed, this is the new layout of my room. I had just moved in recently after my first year, so this is just a quick outlook of what the room looks like. Still sorting some stuff out, but it should be relatively clean by now. So yeah, today I want to focus on talking about my experience in the first year, and I want to talk about how things have gone for me since the last time I had spoken on this video, including about talking about what kind of learning strategies I used to help me get good grades, to help me do really well in school, and how I managed. The entire goal of this video is just to give you, or to journal on my thoughts and how things have worked out so far. So with that in mind, let's get into the video. Alright, so as you can see here, my grades have been distributed. So for the overall term, I had achieved a cumulative average, or an academic period average, of 87.6 for the winter session. That includes both September to May, and the winter session is divided into two terms. So there is the the winter session is divided into two semesters. There's the fall semester and the spring semester. So in the fall semester, it goes from September to December, and then the spring semester goes from January to May. And in the fall semester, I had achieved about a cumulative average of about 90, and then going into this at the end of the spring semester, my average had dropped from 90 to 87.6, which isn't a significant drop, but you can see here that from the grades shown here, right, these grades contribute the most, given that the course weighs the most out of all of these courses. So I'll explain essentially how things came about, why my average had dropped from a 90 to an 87, and what I plan on carrying with me going into the second year. Okay, so just to give you a bit of context on how pharmacy classes generally run. So as you saw from my transcript, you saw that two of those courses had about 15 to 18 credits. That's what you'd normally expect from pharmacy classes. So the first semester was an 18 credit course called Foundations of Pharmacy, and it's split into six different classes. That includes human anatomy and physiology, or what we call APPP, anatomy, physiology, pathology, and pharmacology. That course had laid the foundation or fundamental concepts of human anatomy and the organ systems that are relevant to pharmacy. And then the second class was Introduction to Pharmacokinetics or PK. That's an important class that teaches you distribution of drugs, how drugs are absorbed, and how drugs are cleared from the body or excreted from the body. And then there was Introduction to Medicinal Chemistry and Population and Health, or IMC and PPHC respectively. Those courses are the course Introduction to Medicinal Chemistry is more about the biochemistry behind how drugs are developed and used, and then Population and Health just refers to health economics or pharmaceutical economics. And then I think lastly we have and actually one of these courses is really important, is Introduction to Medication Management, which just teaches you the day-to-day aspect of how a pharmacist usually operates in the workplace. And we also have PDD, which is Pharmaceutics and Drug Delivery Systems, which shows how which focuses more on how drugs are developed and manufactured. So the reason why I'm telling you all this is because this is the basic foundation of how these courses work, and the courses moving forward into the second semester worked a bit like this, and they combined all these concepts from these 6 courses into the later courses in pharmacy that you're going to have to deal with. So I'd say that it is a lot to manage, and what I'm going to do now is show you how I had managed these courses, starting with Onenote. So we can see here that for one of my courses, for Introduction to Medicinal Chemistry, you can see here that I have annotated, or I have written notes out for some parts, just for some basic foundation concepts such as acids and bases. I had to do a lot of annotation or a lot of written notes here for medicinal chemistry because it's a lot more practical based than memorizing for some concepts. I would have to do percentage ionization calculations, so I would have to write stuff down, right? Draw on these notes when I was doing practice problems. And then for lectures, I would have to do a lot of annotations, like a lot of annotations. This is just one such example of where I do annotations, and then I would literally just review the slides like back and forth as I would move through the notes so that it could help drill it in my mind. Let's see. Yeah, so a lot of annotations. I think I was a little excessive with the annotations, but this is primarily what I use OneNote for. It's just to annotate notes or make written notes on making points that would help me understand the concept, and that was really important moving forward. Okay, so now moving into Anki. Anki was definitely critical for memorizing concepts or even just like drug names, and it was actually really important for one of our exams in medication management, or IMM. It was called the FDL, and essentially what we had to do, we had to memorize a lot of drugs as well as medical terminology and dosing for drugs, as well as their indications. Like, there was a lot to memorize, and I'm gonna have to go through them again because it gets worse with each year. Like, you're gonna have to memorize a lot of drugs. So let's see here. Let's go through maybe 1 or 2 flashcard sets. So for Farm 100, or for the FDL, there were some really good FDL flashcards. So some of the flashcards that I used were from other people, because I just did not have the time to make the flashcards, so I had to rely on other people to help me out. I'm just trying to find them. Yes, here we go. PY1 FDL. Yeah, so I'll just show you the flashcards that a friend had made, and essentially it was just, there wasn't even any visual diagrams, right? So as I go through these flashcards, like, I would do a lot of memorization. Sometimes I had sometimes altered the flashcards so that I would be able to see a visual of the molecule of the medication, which sometimes helps me remember what I'm looking at, because some drugs have very similar molecular properties, so it's easy to memorize. It's all about pattern recognition. I would sometimes also underline like some like key parts of the word or the medication, which would also help me notice a pattern in memorizing these drugs. So let me see here if I can pull it up. There were some examples. I would also make notes like on the flashcard, like saying like, remember this, remember that, like on the back of the flashcard, like here, like say for example for methotrexate, the brand name is very similar to the name of the drug itself, like Metaject, methotrexate, and the brand name itself is methotrexate, right? And then let's see here, for other flashcards, say for example for RESP, when I had done lectures on OneNote, I would also like use the occlusion tool to help me memorize. And then sometimes I'd make giant flashcards, which would literally test me on the entire concept. Like say for example here, there are 3 main diagnostic tests. So I would type in like the question and what it's asking, and then I would describe the following about like about the selected test, which in this case is spirometry testing, and I'd ask myself like fundamental questions like how the test works, what the criteria is, when should it be used, list the limitations of this diagnostic test, right? And then I would literally, like for the answer key, all I would do is just paste the screenshot of my notes that were annotated on OneNote to help me answer the question. That's just one particular learning strategy that I've used that has helped me do relatively well on exams. Okay, so I wanted to show you guys what kind of setup I have right now. So what I did when I was studying for exams, so essentially I'd have a dual screen setup. Honestly, the importance of having a dual screen setup is critically important, because like having to switch between tabs takes so much time. You'd have to navigate through the tabs, you'd have to wait for the tab to load. So I think having this system definitely helps, where I could just have tabs open between each side. So essentially I'd organize my tabs by having, say, Anki on one side where I can make the flashcards, and then having my notes on my right side. Anki notes on my left side to make the flashcards, and then having OneNote on my other side so that I can make written notes. And essentially I would just work back and forth from one screen here, and then asking chat questions on this side here, where I would ask them a bunch of questions, like so I could I could use chat to help me understand how the notes work, or what the main concepts are. And so essentially I would use ChatGPT on one side, and then I would sometimes take screenshots of the concepts that were covered, and then I paste them here to help me annotate the notes as I was working through them. I'm not saying that this system will necessarily work for everyone, but I think this is definitely how I was able to work through the dense lectures, because there are a lot of lectures with a lot of slides, and you got to be able to interpret them correctly. So might as well have an AI assistant help you manage that, right? So that you're correctly interpreting the notes and making adequate notes while being efficient on your time. It's just a lot to cover. Yeah. Like, I definitely would not have been able to understand this properly without chat. But it definitely helps. Like, see here, like I literally copied and pasted the notes that chat developed, and then I just copied them here to help me understand, to help paint a better picture so that it's easier to understand. Yeah, that's essentially everything that I did here. It's actually the most important learning strategy that I have to use. Okay. Alright, so lastly we'll get into the last strategy for learning, which is probably the most important strategy that I needed to help keep track of my ideas and my thoughts as I was going along. And it's just journaling in general, but in particular it's more of like making sure that I'm holding myself accountable when I'm going through the lectures and when I'm going through the slides, so that I know that when I do write the exam, I know that I've confidently put the time in to like doing really well on these exams. So in particular, this is the most important section, is that I kept a productivity tracker where I would log in how many hours that I jotted down through the Forest app, which is just a productivity app that counts how many hours that you had accumulated on the app and put your phone away so that you can focus on studying. I use it to track how long I study, essentially. So as you can see here, that there were a lot of hours I had dedicated to studying. Like some days would be 9 hours, right? And then I'd jot down what lectures I covered for that day, right? So review, right? And then some days it would be 3 hours, and then on some very rare occasional days there would be some very disgusting study sessions. Like at one point there was a 15-hour study session. I think this is definitely probably the worst thing I've ever done to myself. So I've dedicated legitimately 15 hours to studying in one day, which was mind-bogglingly hard. Like some days would be like for days on end, it could be 8 hours to 10 hours. Like it escalates pretty badly. And then there'd be other days where it gets pretty dead. Like it's more of a trend that you can see here. So alright, so you may have noticed that I have just gotten a haircut. I had to do it just so that I could get freshened up for the new year. And you may have also noticed that I've switched my clothes. It's because I also plan on going for a walk after this. But I just wanted to get into the next section of this video, which talks about some of the reasons why I didn't do well towards the end of the semester, and explain a bit how my grade dropped. So I'd say that the semester was incredible. The spring semester was incredibly brutal because by the time the second semester had started, I had realized that my grade had I had felt incredibly burnt out from the first semester, and I had to defer an exam that I had to write at the beginning of the first semester, at the beginning of the second semester. So by then I was already incredibly tired, and heading into the second semester, I felt that I was no longer able to necessarily keep up effectively with my classes, and then I just had to keep on deferring exams, and I had to keep on writing exams with poor sleep. I was feeling mentally fatigued, and in one of those days when I had prepared to write those exams, that was actually where the 15-hour came from. So I realized that I was spending a lot of time studying at that point, and it got incredibly exhausting. So it became a vicious feedback loop where I felt like at that point I wasn't really studying effectively for the long term. In fact, a lot of my mind feels a bit fuzzy about how things went when I had finished my studying. I mean, I was still able to retain a lot of information, but I felt like I could have done a lot better in terms of retaining information and possibly even doing well on exams had I been more well rested during this exam season. I think as you'll find that as the year progresses, the exams get you incredibly mentally fatigued. So I think something that I definitely learned from this is obviously self-care, but it's really difficult to do that when the exams pile up on one after the other. Yeah, so like there's just a lot of contributing factors as well. And another thing to know is that throughout the year, the exam scheduling gets more fast-paced as the year progresses. Like sometimes you'll find yourself with like one exam, one major quiz or midterm one week, and then the following week you'll have a final exam that'll test you on the same material that you learned literally last week. So there's really not a lot of downtime to prepare for these classes. So it's really important that when you do write these exams, it's really important that you're well rested and you're not feeling super mentally fatigued. Alright, So we've started to reach the end of this video. Now we're gonna lastly talk about some of my strategies that I've incorporated into this coming semester. So this coming semester, I also wanted to prioritize really doing well in this semester so that I can solidify my grades for the first half of the year, for the first half of the pharmacy program that's graded. So the pharmacy program that's graded is worth 3 years. From the first month of the first year to the end of May in the third year, that section is all graded. So it's important that you do relatively well if you want to consider options in hospital, which is what I'm actually considering. But I think first and foremost, what I really would love to have is my doors open. So that's why I prioritize having high grades. And I think that to do that, I need to prioritize studying effectively, which means getting proper rest. So what I did to prioritize myself more throughout this coming semester is to study ahead of time. So I planned on studying. I spent the last month of August studying, the last month of summer, which is August, studying my courses ahead of time, and I was able to get around, say, 50 lectures, 47 lectures out of the 60 lectures that we have to cover this year, to help me adequately prepare for the exam so that I can prioritize proper rest and sleep. Because I found that during last semester, I found that it was incredibly difficult to keep up with the lectures that were being placed on top one after the other, and having to complete assignments at the same time is also incredibly hard. So I had to prioritize finishing the bulk of the course first, which are the lectures that cover the modules, so that I could focus more on taking care of myself, which is what my main focus is going to be. So I'm going to be focusing on just doing a lot of practice, getting good sleep, eating enough, and making sure that I'm taking care of my mental health and going for walks or doing some sort of hobby that I really enjoy. I mean, this is basic self-care 101, right? Sleep, mental recovery, food, going to the gym if you need to, right? All of these basic facets will all contribute to helping you get better grades. And that's what I want to believe in, because I had to cut out a lot of those things moving into the second semester. So I really want to prioritize focusing on that going forward this year. So yeah, that's about it for this video. If you have any questions, and if you feel like I've missed anything, feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I possibly can. It's just the ramping of the schedule and school get in the way. So, but I'll do my best to respond. I think it's definitely going to be a bit of a challenging year, but I think as long as I keep my head on straight and as long as I focus on doing the right thing, I think it should be okay. Anyways, thanks again everyone for watching.